I hope you're hungry for some great football information because we are joining Timothy P. Brown for one of his famous factoid feasts. Tim's up in just a moment to tell us all about this great football history.
This is the Pigskin Daily History Dispatch, a podcast that covers the anniversaries of American football events throughout history. Your host, Darren Hayes, is podcasting from America's North Shore to bring you the memories of the gridiron, one day at a time.
Hello, my football friends. This is Darren Hayes of PigskinDispatch.com. Welcome once again to the Pig Pen, your portal to positive football history, and welcome to another Tuesday where we get to go back in time, the time machine of Tim Brown and his football archaeology tidbits. Tim, welcome back to the Pig Pen.
Hey, Darren. Looking forward to chatting. And like I always say, there's nothing like hanging with my boy, Darren.
I don't think you ever say that, Tim.
I
Honestly.
say it all the time.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Ask my wife. Ask my wife.
Yeah, it's really getting deep in here. I got to get the boots on here in the Pig Pen. But we have one of my favorite segments of yours. You have your factoid feasts, and the one we're going to talk about tonight is your 15th rendition. You're far beyond that now. You've got them coming out quite often now. It's not quite often, but they come out periodically, let's say.
Yeah.
And these are little rapid fire tidbits that are the tidbits of tidbits, I guess you could say. And
Yes.
you put multiples together and really a lot of fun. So what do you have in store for us tonight?
Yeah. So this one, I've kind of started trying to find like themes to the factoid feast. And so this one is like kind of really old days of, like maybe pre 1910. So the first one concerns a guy named Bemis Pierce, and he was a stud. He played for Carlisle, and so he played in the old days of Carlisle, before the century turned, and so it kind of focuses on a game that occurred in 1896. Carlisle played Wisconsin at the Chicago Coliseum. And, if you're not familiar with the Coliseum, and there's really no reason why you should be, but the Coliseum was an indoor venue. And so this is one of the early games so it's an early game under artificial lights. It's an early game indoors. And they played a couple of different games there. Different teams did. But in any event, in 1896, Wisconsin had a kicker punter named Pat O'Day. He's an Australian guy, so they called him the Kangaroo Kicker. And he was an absolute stud. He had a 110-yard punt and made a 60-yard field goal from against the sideline, because no hash marks back then. Or I said 60-yard punt, 60-yard kick, field goal from along a sideline. So pretty impressive guy. And the day that they played Carlisle, he had a 50, 45, 50, and 75-yard punts that day. So, hard to beat a kicking punting performance like O'Day that day. And yet, Bemis Pierce had bested O'Day in terms of the hang time that he accomplished that day, because he's playing in an indoor stadium, and at one point in the game, Pierce punts the ball, it heads up, sailing up into the air, and it gets stuck in the rafters of the stadium, and so literally some fan crawled out on the beams and everything to knock the ball back down onto the field, because they only had one ball. They had one game ball, and they were going to have to use that thing no matter what happened to it. And so, anyways, I just think that's kind of an amusing thing. And but Bemis Pierce ends up, he was so he had probably the longest hang time of the year, one would think, for 1896. he ends up playing pro football with the Homestead team in, the, I guess, Philadelphia area, right? It was Homestead.
No, Homestead down by Pittsburgh.
Okay, Pittsburgh.
Mhm.
Same difference,
Yeah.
Pennsylvania. And
Just a few hundred miles apart.
yeah,
So,
whatever, whatever. But he ended up coaching at a couple places, and he, as far as I know, he's the only guy who played at all the big three Indian schools. He coached at Sherman out in California, he coached at Haskell in Kansas, and he coached at Carlisle in Pennsylvania. And in 1906, he was the coach when that's the first year of the forward pass, and so he was the coach who had his eligible receivers paint their helmets red or white to distinguish them from ineligible receivers. So he's the guy who first had football helmets painted a color other than tan or black, or whatever football helmets
so,
naturally turned out.
so step aside, Gurky. We got somebody before
Yeah, yeah.
you.
Oh, yeah. No, for sure.
Yeah. Huh,
So
interesting.
that's kind of a good one. And then the next part of the tidbit was
But
Benny Owen. Oh,
well,
sorry.
but before
Yeah.
you go there,
Okay.
because there's some more on Bemis Pierce, because I believe, well, I know Bemis Pierce was a part of the 1902 World Series of Football. He was part of that Syracuse team. I think him and his
Oh,
brother
okay.
were on
Okay.
that. And the 1903 World Series of Football, Patty O'Day was supposed to enter into it. And he backed out his team. He was some dental school in the Midwest. They backed out at the last minute, and the Orange, New Jersey got in as one of the four teams for that second World Series of Football. So both those guys were involved in those World Series of Footballs at Madison Square Garden.
Yeah. Well, and those were very famous among the early pro football, folks.
Mm-hmm.
O'Day was, I had an interesting conversation recently with an American guy who's living in Australia, who's in a lot of Australian football things, and so we had a whole conversation about Pat O'Day, and he's got researched him, and he was saying that O'Day must have run into, I forget what it was, gambling problems or something like that, but like he disappeared for like 30 years, and like Wisconsin had no idea what happened to the guy, and then he suddenly reappears in like 1932, shows up at Camp Randall, you know, hello. So,
Wow.
anyways,
Okay, I'm sorry. You're going to start on your
yeah,
next segment.
yeah. So Benny Owen, I mean, he's one of those guys that you, you know of Benny Owen because Owen Field at Oklahoma is named after him. And so, but he's one of those guys that you don't really, you've heard Owen Field a million times, but you have no idea who the guy is. And he's a really interesting fellow. Um, so he was, he he played at Kansas, and his senior year he plays under this guy named Fielding Yost, and he was one of the first guys. He's actually, other than a guy that played at Chicago under Stagg, he's the second earliest guy I know of who threw an overhand spiral pass in a game. Now he threw it as a lateral, but um, so plays for Yost, hurry up, that whole thing, and then after he graduates, he uh, he he coaches for Washburn, which is right near Lawrence, and his big innovation was to replace the tin wash tub in the locker room with a cold shower. That was like, I mean, you just kind of have to step back and go, these guys were playing under, you look at their uniforms and their pads and everything, and, you know, we look at them as so primitive compared to today. And yet there were other things, they were riding horses, they're taking baths, team baths in like one guy jumps out and the other guy jumps into the tin bathtub, stuff like that. That you probably,
Talk about the sweaty backwash you're
yes,
watching.
yes, yes,
You want to be
yes.
the last guy in, right?
Yeah. So it's just like crazy the things that we just take for granted. And yet, his was a big, big step. Hey, we've got cold showers now. Uh, so then he assists Yost at Michigan for a year and then takes over at Bethany for 3. And during that time, he beats Oklahoma twice. So they're like, maybe we should hire this guy to coach our team. And they did. So he joins Oklahoma, I think in 1905. And he's there for 25 years as coach and AD. Partway through, in a hunting accident, he loses his right arm, I think it was, but one of his
Mm.
arms. Um, and yet he still teaches himself how to skeet shoot and everything after that. Just, really a pretty incredible guy. He's, one of the first guys, 1913, 1914, with a pass heavy offense. He just happened to have a quarterback that a guy named Forrest Point, the Point. Anyway, spot, because he could hit somebody on the spot. Point Forrest Spot Geyer, who was just a great quarterback, very pinpoint passer. He took advantage of it, and they would throw 30 times a game in 1914, era. So just innovative guy. So, anyways, I think he's one of those guys that people lose track of, and yet his name remains on the Oklahoma campus. But more people ought to know about him. He's just a really, really an innovative guy. Willing to adapt his style, his team, his plays to the talent that he had available,
Yeah,
which
that's a very
some
cool.
folks aren't willing to do, right?
Right.
So
I guess one of the questions I would have is, with the whole cold shower thing, those seasons, did the population of that area take a dip? These guys are after the game, they're ready to go. They're the big heroes going
uh,
home and, spending time with their
well,
lady. But now maybe the cold shower
well,
sort of
I,
put a
I
damper.
I think that Washburn may have been. It was like a lot of schools had a religious bent to it, so probably none of that was allowed.
Yeah, I'm sure it never happened.
Yeah.
Yeah, college age men, that would never happen, I'm
Yeah.
sure.
Well, you know.
The-
So then the third one maybe isn't as exciting. I just think it's fun. Uh, was about the Army Navy Life Trophy. So back in the day, and the day being like immediately after the forward pass became legal, there's a publication called the Army Navy Life. So it's some kind of publication that was targeted at Army and Navy personnel with stories about them, etc. And so they decided to sponsor a trophy to the winner of the Army and Navy game. And so I came across this, just found this picture of the trophy and a brief article about it. So I tried to research it. Basically, there wasn't a whole lot to be found out there about it. But it's mentioned in 1907 because Navy won the trophy. The first year it was introduced. Uh, Army wins in 1908, and this is supposed to be one of these trophies, like a lot at the time. First team to win 3 times keeps the trophy. So 1909, um, you know, uh, Army had a defensive. Well, he was a tackle who was killed in a game against.
Mm.
Was killed in a game, and then Navy had a guy who was paralyzed in a game who died. Later, maybe 4 months later from injuries. But they canceled the Army Navy game, so that the 1909 game never got played. And so after that, there's no mention that I can find of this Army Navy trophy. So, whatever happened to it, who knows? But it was like kind of a cool, like we have the Commander in Chief's trophy today, right? For Army, Navy,
Mm.
and Air Force. Back then we had the Army Navy Life Trophy, but it was awarded twice and then it disappeared. So if anybody out there is listening who happens to have in their basement the Army Navy Life Trophy, let us know. Reach out to Darren or to me, and we'll
Yeah.
get you in touch with the authorities.
Yeah. Yeah, it's probably a very coveted trophy by collectors and museums all over the place.
I mean, can you imagine, coming up with it? I mean, who knows? It could be sitting up there somewhere, right?
Stranger things have happened. I
Yeah.
have a friend of mine, Greg Faseri, his great grandfather played in the early 1900s and late 19th century in Pittsburgh, the original pro football. And they had, one of the teams he played for was Homestead. We talked about
Yeah.
recently.
With
Um,
Bemis.
he found this trophy from 1902 Pittsburgh Stars winning the original National Football League, 3-team baseball league of football. They found it in the Homestead Library in the basement in a closet, and nobody had any idea what it was. So Greg retrieved it, got it, asked them if he could take it, took it to the Pro Football Hall of Fame, and it's somewhere, or I don't think it's on display, but so think about that. This is 60 some years before the Lombardi Trophy. Here is the original National Football League, 18 years before the one we know now is in play, and the trophy there. So that's really a good find. I think he found another championship trophy too from like 1902 or something, 1901.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, you never know what's hidden in somebody's attic, and hopefully somebody finds
closet.
Somebody finds an Army Navy Life Trophy, and then we've got another story to tell.
Yeah, most definitely. Well, you always have some great little stories to tell. These are the segmented tidbits that you did today in your factoid feast, but you have, often have these tidbits come out that really astound the nostalgia of the game to us and really make it enjoyable read, and we learn a lot from them, myself included. And maybe you could tell people how they could take in some of these.
Sure. Just go to the site, footballarchaeology.com. It's a Substack site, so you can either just visit there whenever you want, subscribe. If in that case you'd get an email every time I publish a new story, or you can follow me on Blue Sky, or just bookmark the site and check in periodically. So, whenever you have an appetite for a little bit of old time football.
Now, Tim, our listeners have, and we do ourselves, we always have that appetite. So we're glad that you're there to fill it for us and come on and share it with us each Tuesday. So we'd love to talk to you again next week.
Very good. Look forward to it.
That's all the football history we have today, folks. Join us back tomorrow for more of your football history. We invite you to check out our website, pigskindispatch.com, not only to see the daily football history, but to experience positive football with our many articles on the good people of the game, as well as our own football comic strip, Cleat Marks Comics. Pigskindispatch.com is also on social media outlets, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and don't forget the Pigskin Dispatch YouTube channel to get all of your positive football news and history. Special thanks to the talents of Mike and Gene Monroe, as well as Jason Neff for letting us use their music during our podcast.
This podcast is part of the Sports History Network, your headquarters for the yesteryear of your favorite sport. You can learn more at sportshistorynetwork.com.